All right, before we jump back into our series, I want to tell you a couple things. In 2 weeks from today, which is July 9th, we have a big special Sunday. Our state administrative bishop, or our overseer as some people call him, he will be here with us, sharing God's word with us. He and his wife, his name is Rick Witter, and his wife is Letha, and we'll show a little bit more about them next week, but I wanted you to just kind of mark your calendars to try to be here, bring some friends. Let's pack the place out for that day. He's over all of the churches of God in Pennsylvania, which we have about 97 of them across the whole state, and so we're fortunate that we were able to book him a while back to get here to come and speak to us, and it's such an honor, and he's an incredible leader, and I get the privilege of serving with him on our state council, and you're going to really enjoy him, and you're going to enjoy his wife, and you'll enjoy what he has to say, and just the Lord's going to speak to us that day, I believe. Also, so that's 2 weeks. Next week, I wanted to let you know also that in our message, we're going to end our series today so that next week I can speak to you about what we're in right now that they call Pride Month. So the message next month is going to address these issues of Pride Month and the LGBT community, and the question of, does the Bible address this, and how are we supposed to respond? So I encourage you to be here, to invite some friends, invite people that maybe are dealing with this issue or have different viewpoints, and it'd be a great opportunity to reach out to friends and family about this issue. Because they've labeled the month of June Pride Month. You've probably seen it in different places in stores and online. And so I want to address that from a biblical standpoint. So for today, we're going to finish up our series that has been called God, Me, and Money. And we've been looking at how the relationship that we have with God affects the relationship that we have with money, and the relationship with money affects the relationship, our relationship that we have with God. And remember, we're talking about money because so many biblical authors, including Jesus, talked about the role and the dangers of money in our lives, and really about how God's economy and man's economy are totally different. So let's review one more time what these two economies are all about. Man's economy is centered on money and me, but God's economy is centered simply on God, that he's the center of the economy, of his economy and all of history. We also established that God's economy is shaped by three kingdom values. They are lordship, stewardship, and generosity. Lordship is the idea that living in God's kingdom and operating in his economy, it all starts with surrendering to the authority of Jesus. And then stewardship is that everything belongs to God, and he wants us to be wise managers of everything that he's given to us. And then, of course, generosity, which I really highlighted last week, is that in God's kingdom, a major key to being wealthy is being generous. And that the same measure that we use to be generous will be used to give back to us, as Scripture teaches us. Now, there's one more component that I'd like to focus on today and wrap up our series. The question is, how can the three kingdom values of God's economy be applied practically? If we're going to look at these major kingdom values of God's economy, how can we really dig down and learn how to apply this in the regular Christian life and the life of the church? Really, there's a number of answers to this question, but one of the most significant ways that we do this, that we apply these kingdom values, is through something called tithing. Now, you may have heard of the word tithe or tithing around here or at another church or somewhere else at some point. It's really a common word or a popular word that's used in the church world to refer simply to people's regular financial contributions to the church that sustain the ministry. That the church word that we use is tithe, but it's just talking about the regular contributions that people give to keep the church going and the ministry happening. Maybe you knew that. What you might not know is that the word tithe literally means a tenth or 10%. And so when we say we give our tithe to God, what we're actually saying is that we're giving 10% of our income to him through his church. Now, also, there's something else called the tithe of a tithe. When you give to the church, you may already know, but some I'm sure don't, how the system works around here. We're part of a network called the Church of God, and so we as a church receive the tithe, your tithe, and then we also tithe out of that. And so the way we do that is 10% goes to different denominational areas. And so you can see it up there on the screen that when you give and you mark tithe online or on the envelope or however you do that, that 5% of what is given goes directly to our state office to support the ministries of our state, things like youth camp that we've been talking a lot about, and our staff there, and the oversight that we have that helps keep us accountable, helps keep me accountable. If I were to lose my mind and start preaching all kinds of wacky things, we've got an overseer that can come in and punt me down the field. But that supports all of that system. And then there's 2.5% of that 10 that goes to our international headquarters down in Tennessee, down in Cleveland, Tennessee, to support all of the administration that happens in running our denomination and making sure that we're all on the same page. And then the other 2.5% goes directly to the World Missions Department, and it is sent all around the world in 183 countries. We have missionaries, churches, schools, training centers, all kinds of exciting things happening in every continent, just incredible stuff. And so that's how it filters down as you give if you mark tithe. So when you do that, if you mark tithe, if you give a tithe to this church, just know that you are automatically giving to this church and outward to the ministries that happen outside of here and all around the world. So I think that's pretty exciting news and a big part of what we're trying to do around here, and being a part of something that's a little bigger than ourselves. So the tithe is talking about a tenth. It's talking about 10%. So I want to do a little object lesson here today with some money. So I need a middle schooler. I know our middle schoolers are in here today, and so I want to call one of them up here. Is there one here that maybe would want to come? Don't worry, I won't embarrass you too much. Anyone? Okay, let's see. Over there, you think? Who is that? Is that Levi over there? Is that Levi? I can't tell. Sorry, it's a little dark. Yeah, all right, let's go, Levi. Come on. Let's give him a hand. All right, Levi. What grade are you in?
Going into
8th grade. Okay, so you know math. You know how to count. You know how to add and subtract. You count to 10. Is that doable? Yeah? Okay, so in my pocket, I happen to have 10 $1 bills. Here, why don't you count it and make sure it's right. Make sure I can count to 10. No pressure. It's just lights and all these people. But is it 10? Wow, you are good. Okay, you did that quick. Okay, so if we're talking about tithing, it basically is 10%. So do you know what 10% of $10 is? $1. He is good. Taught him well, parents. So I've got these $10. So when I get my check or my income, and you have a job? No? You don't like a construction foreman or anything? No, not a teacher. Oh, that's right, you're in 8th grade. Yeah. But you're a baseball star. I know that, yeah. So you may be getting a lot of these one day. We'll see. So if I'm going to tithe on every $10 that I get, I'm going to take, you said, 1, right? And I give that to the Lord. So why don't you be the Lord for a minute? I'm going to give that to the church. And so I'm left with how many?
$9.
9. So the idea is I give 1 to God through his church, and I keep 9 to live off of. So let me have the dollar back. Now I'm going to give you this, and let's do a little scenario where you're now an adult and you got your money. So hold your money out. You're ready, and life comes at you fast, right? So you got to pay for a house. So that's going to be at least 2 of those dollars, right? So then why don't you give me that? We bought a house, and you like to have nice cars, I'm sure, right? And since COVID, the price of cars went up, so it's probably going to be 2 for a nice car, too. What are you going to get? What do you think?
Truck, probably.
A truck? Yeah, that's definitely going to be 2, maybe more. Yeah, okay, and you like to eat, sort of, but you eat food, right? So probably out of your $10, we're going to have to take another 2 out of that, yeah. Okay, and then you're probably going to need something to wear, right? You like cool stuff, and they got new shoes that come out and all that. So you're probably going to spend another 2 on clothes, right? Okay, now you're married and you're going to have kids, and your kids are going to need stuff, right? You got to buy diapers and you got to buy formula, and okay, so that's probably going to be another 2. So why don't you give me that? Now they just came out with a new TV, a new TV. So why don't you pay 2 for that as well? You don't have any. He's saying, I'm in debt. I mean, he's getting it. He's getting it quick. Okay, so, but you really got to have that TV, right? So why don't you borrow $2 from me, and then you can have that TV. So now you're at -2, okay? Now we haven't even gotten into insurance and taxes and all of that. So it looks like you're in a little bit of trouble. Oh, wait, we were supposed to give to God. Oh, we forgot. So maybe we should go to the car and scrounge up some change, and we'll just put that in the offering. You think that's no good, right? We missed it, didn't we? Because we started with the house, right? What we should have done was what? Give the dollar to the Lord. Yeah, so here, you take that for a second, and let's start off right. Give the dollar to the Lord. That's the 1, and 90%. So now, you got to figure out a way to live on the 90%, and God's going to show himself to be faithful, I believe. So you know what? That's yours. The 90% is yours. Thanks, dude. Such a smart kid. He walked away with $9, and I got 1. But that's just a simple object lesson of how it's supposed to work in God's kingdom, that we start with the 10, and then we live off of the 90. Now, I know when we start talking about money, and some of you are here for the first time, or you come every now and then, and you're like, oh man, I come today, the pastor's talking about money. Look, I know there's a lot of skepticism when it comes to churches and pastors and money, because quite honestly, some pastors and churches haven't always really handled things well, haven't been transparent enough, haven't managed money well, or in some cases, they've even been dishonest or shady or deceitful with money and used it inappropriately. So if you're a little suspicious of giving money to a church, look, I get it. I understand where you're coming from. But as far as our church, we want to be honest with you. We want to be transparent. So just know that if you ever want a copy of our financial report or of our budget here at New Life, we're more than happy to give that to you. We can print it off. Just let us know. Just request it so you can see what's going on behind the scenes. Also, there's 2 other just important side notes that I want to make sure you know. First is that our church, and pretty much every other church like us, is 100% donor supported. That means that our ministry is able to continue and function because of you. That we're not funded by some other far-off corporation or by some church headquarters or by the government or anything like that. Second thing is that when you give to New Life Covenant, some people may wonder this, it doesn't affect or change the salary of my salary or our staff. Pastor Kenneth, we're employed by this church, but it's not like every Sunday in the offering we get some sort of percentage cut or work on like a commission. Like if you're in sales or something, maybe that's your world, but that's not our world. It doesn't affect what we make. And so if you wanted to give $1 million today, which is, we will accept cash, check, card, but that will not affect the money that I get or that Pastor Kenneth or our staff gets. It goes to the church. So I just wanted to make sure we're all on the same page on how all that stuff works. And so if you've been here a long time and you know all that, then just thank you for humoring me for a minute. But I know there are people among us and people online that don't know that, because we don't just talk about it all the time, but I wanted to bring it up. Now, back to this idea of tithing. Is this just some kind of made-up system, like a man-made system that the church invented to fund itself? Or is there more to it? Is this concept of tithing, is it actually in the Bible? I mean, where does it come from? Well, yeah, it's in the Bible, and there's another idea along with this idea of tithing called first fruits. It's another, which I guess you could say, church word. So I'd like to unpack that with you also as we as we go through it today, because these two ideas go hand in hand. So let's go to Scripture and let's go back all the way to the beginning of things, because the first time that the tithe is mentioned in the Bible is way back before what we call the Mosaic Law was written, before Israel really became official and formed and had Moses give them the Ten Commandments and the law of God was written. Before all of that, we see in the story of Abram, who later became Abraham, that God reached out to him and made him promises of many descendants in Genesis 14, and then we also see it with Jacob in Genesis 28. So I encourage you to go back and just read those sections and those chapters, and you can see how tithing was established before the law. But this practice of tithing really starts to come to the forefront if we fast forward for about 1,000 years after Abraham to his descendants, the Hebrews, who they've now escaped from slavery in Egypt. Let my people go with Pharaoh, that whole story, if you've ever seen the Ten Commandments or Prince of Egypt or any of the stories of Moses. They've crossed over the Red Sea and that miraculous parting of the Red Sea, and the people walked across. And then they've established their own nation, and they have God as their king, and Moses is their intermediary. He's their leader. And so then God gives them the law, which includes things like the Ten Commandments: do not lie, don't steal, honor your father and mother, things like that. But it also had a lot of other specific laws like the tithe. So I want to read a couple places here from the Old Testament, from the law, where God commands his people to tithe. In Leviticus 27, it says, 1/10 of the produce of the land, whether grain from the fields or fruit from the trees, belongs to the Lord and must be set apart to him as holy. Notice that it says 1/10. We're talking about 10%, the produce of the land. So the tithe back then, since they didn't have dollar bills like we do and use money like that, it was mostly goods, crops, fruits, animals, things like that represented their wealth. And so God commands them to give 1/10 of that, and it must be set apart because it belongs to the Lord and it is holy. Then again in Deuteronomy 14:22, the Lord says, once again, you must set aside a tithe of your crops, 1/10 of all the crops you harvest each year. Bring this tithe to the designated place of worship, the place the Lord your God chooses for his name to be honored, and eat it there in his presence. This applies to your tithes of grain, new wine, olive oil, and the firstborn males of your flocks and herds. And then I love this sentence. Doing this will teach you always to fear the Lord your God. That's such a key component of what God's trying to do here. And when he says fear, he doesn't mean make you afraid like you're afraid of snakes or monsters. He's talking about having a reverence and an awe, like you have a healthy fear of the ocean, that I'm not scared of it, but I realize the power of the ocean, that if I'm not careful, that it could overpower me because of its size. And so that's what God is saying, that tithing will teach you to always have that healthy respect, healthy view that God stays on the throne of your heart. So this is how tithing was established among God's people. Now, I mentioned earlier that there's another aspect to tithing called first fruits. This is the idea that tithing isn't just 10% of our income, which is fine if we think that when we think the word tithe, but it actually has another component. It's actually supposed to be our first and our best. It's our first and our best. You notice when with Levi that the money, that we took the first dollar and we gave that to the Lord. It's our first and our best. And so we see the first fruits as part of this Mosaic law as well. So look at Leviticus 23. Verse 9, you know you're having a good day if you're reading two passages from Leviticus. Church joke, if you didn't get it, it's okay. Verse 9 says, Then the Lord said to Moses, Give the following instructions to the people of Israel. When you enter the land I am giving you, and you harvest its first crops, bring the priest a bundle of grain from the, what does it say? First cutting of your grain harvest. On the day after the Sabbath, the priest will lift it up before the Lord, so it may be accepted on your behalf. So again, we see the first, the tithe being connected to the first. Then we also see that Moses writes to the Levites, who were the tribe that they didn't get any land as an inheritance. They became the priests. And so the law was, hey, everybody, all the other tribes got land. These guys didn't get land. So all of you that got land, you're going to bring a tithe to them, to the Levites, the priests, those that work in God's house. And they're going to live off of the tithe. But then Moses also says to the Levites, in Numbers 18, be sure to give the Lord the best portions of the gifts given to you. So there's where we get some of this idea of the tithe of a tithe. That those that receive the tithe also tithe the best portion. So it's the first and it's the best that are to be given. Now maybe the best example of first fruits in the Bible is found back in the beginning of Genesis, way back than anything we've read so far, all the way back to Adam and Eve's sons, Cain and Abel. In Genesis 4, verse 3, when it was time for the harvest, Cain presented some of his crops as a gift to the Lord. We're clued in here by that word some, and we find out later that that was not good. That Cain just he had his crops, but he had some leftovers, and he gathered them together, and he gave just some. Here's some of my stuff to the Lord. But verse 4 says, Abel, his brother, also brought a gift, the best portions of the firstborn lambs from his flock. The Lord accepted Abel and his gift, but he did not accept Cain and his gift. This made Cain very angry, and he looked dejected. Why are you so angry? The Lord asked Cain. Why do you look so dejected? You will be accepted if you do what is right. But if you refuse to do what is right, then watch out. Sin is crouching at the door, eager to control you, but you must subdue it and be its master. And of course, if you know the story, Cain does not listen to the Lord, and he, in his anger and in his jealousy, he kills his brother. Premeditated murder, kills his brother. Man, if only Cain had gotten this, that it's the first and the best. If he had done that, things probably would have turned out differently. But see, Cain's heart was already corrupted before he brought his offering to God. It wasn't even just when he presented the offering. It was before, when he was relying on himself and he was figuring, I don't think I can give up all of that. I don't think I can part with that. I've got to build my kingdom. I've got to do my thing. I've got to be in control. I've got to manage this. His heart was already corrupt. And so it led him to a very dark place. So this is first fruits, the first and the best. And so there's also a reference to first fruits in the New Testament, and it's a totally different scenario. It comes from the Apostle Paul, and he's actually talking about how Jesus rose from the dead. And so he says all believers will also rise from the dead when Jesus returns. Look what he says in 1 Corinthians 15:22. For as in Adam all die. Who in the world's Adam? We're talking about Adam and Eve, Adam the first man, Adam who sinned and ruined it for everybody. Now there's sin in the world. So Paul says, for as in Adam all die, so in Christ all will be made alive, but each in turn. In other words, each in order. There's an order to how this is going to happen. Christ, what's the word? What is it? Christ, the first fruits. Isn't that strange? We're thousands of years later. Christ, the first fruits. Then when he comes, those who belong to him. So Jesus' resurrection is the first, and it's the best of all the resurrections that will happen when he returns. That Jesus will resurrect us, but Jesus resurrected himself. He's the first, and he is the best. He's the most amazing resurrection. That he didn't require an outside force to raise him up from the dead. He's the first fruits. I just wanted us to see that God wants our first and our best when it comes to tithing, when it comes to everything that we are and do. He doesn't want the last and the worst or just the leftovers in our lives with our time and our money and our relationships and everything that we do. He doesn't want just the leftovers. So then the question, what about tithing in the New Testament? Is it in there? I mean, we've looked a lot at the Old Testament, but what about the New? Well, To be honest, there's not much that's really spoken about tithing in the New Testament. It's definitely not as much as it is in the Old Testament. But we're also never told that tithing stopped or it ended or it was over at any point. So if the desire is to have some very concrete, set in stone, black and white, by the book approach to tithing based on the New Testament, which I don't really think is the best approach to it because of the shift that happens in the New Testament. But if that's the case, then I think the best place to look for that is in the book of Acts. But it actually looks a bit different than what we've seen so far. If we're looking for a hard and fast rule, I guess this is what it would be. After Jesus ascends back to heaven and the church is born, and it's growing like crazy. Acts 4:32 says all the believers were in one heart and mind. So there was unity, right? No one claimed that any of their possessions was their own, but they shared everything they had. Remember what everything means? It means everything, right? With great power, the apostles continued to testify to the resurrection of the Lord Jesus, and God's grace was so powerfully at work in them all that there were no needy persons among them. For from time to time, those who owned land or houses sold them, brought the money from the sales, and put it at the apostles' feet, and it was distributed to anyone who had need. Wow. So they didn't claim anything as their own. They shared everything, and they distributed to people in need. So it looks like, if we're looking for a rule, the 10% changed to 100%. So if you want to do that, I guess that's okay. If you want to switch from 10% to 100%, if you want a rule like that, then that's fine. I don't know, is that percentage better? Is that more convenient? Probably not. So instead of approaching this issue or this subject like it's something that's a rule and we have to do it because God has commanded it and we read it in the Old Testament, let's approach it from a different way, from a practical perspective. And let's look at the question, what does tithing do? I mean, we don't want to just do things because we're supposed to, right? Or I should, or I feel an obligation. It's just a ritual. No, what is the point of this, practically speaking? What does tithing do? The first thing that tithing does is that it opens the door to God's blessings. It opens the door to God's blessings. In the Old Testament, remember God established tithing in the Mosaic Law, and he told his people to regularly put this into practice as an act of obedience to him. But the pattern of the Israelites in the Old Testament, they went through this cycle over and over and over, where they would obey God for a while, and then they would walk away from him, disobey him, worship false gods, marry pagan people, live in immorality, and then their judgment would come, and they would go, oh, Lord, we're so ruined and wrecked and messed up, and please forgive us. And they would come back to the Lord and then start the cycle all over. And so when we look at the very end of the Old Testament, which is an important thing, it's some of the last words that are going to be said for this 400-year gap. There's a 400-year gap between the Old Testament and the New Testament. And so there's some important things being said. And during this time, it's this long season of disobedience that Israel is in. And one of the areas is tithing. And so Malachi 3, verse 7, this is the prophet Malachi speaking on behalf of the Lord. He says, ever since the days of your ancestors, you have scorned my decrees and failed to obey them. Now return to me, and I will return to you, says the Lord of heaven's armies. But you ask, how can we return when we have never gone away? So they didn't even know. What are you talking about? We're still with you? What? What are we doing that's so bad? Verse 8, should people cheat God? Yeah, you have cheated me. But you ask, what do you mean? When did we ever cheat you? You have cheated me of the tithes and offerings due to me. You are under a curse, for your whole nation has been cheating me. And then I love verse 10. Bring all the tithes into the storehouse, so there will be enough food in my temple. If you do, says the Lord of heaven's armies, I will open the windows of heaven for you. I will pour out a blessing so great you won't have enough room to take it in. Try it. Put me to the test. Your crops will be abundant, for I will guard them from insects and disease. Your grapes will not fall from the vine before they are ripe, says the Lord of heaven's armies. Then the nations will call you blessed, for your land will be such a delight, says the Lord of heaven's armies. You know, this is really the only area where God tells his people, try it, test me, try this out, and see if I'm not true to my word. That you will be blessed. We also see King David in what he writes in Proverbs 3, verse 9. We're used to Proverbs 3, verse 5, where he says, trust in the Lord with all your heart and lean not on your own understanding. In all of your ways acknowledge him, and he will direct your paths. Many of us know that verse. You ever heard that verse? Anybody ever heard that? Proverbs 3, 5, and 6. But we never go down a couple verses to verse 9, which says, honor the Lord with your wealth, with the first fruits of all your crops. Then your barns will be filled to overflowing, and your vats will brim over with new wine. See how there's blessing associated with tithing and first fruits? It's right there. Trust in the Lord with all of your heart. In all your ways acknowledge him. And then he says, honor the Lord with your wealth, with the first fruits. They're not separate ideas. So the first thing that tithing does is it opens the door to God's blessings. The second thing is tithing breaks the power of greed and self-sufficiency in our hearts. Now, I know nobody here has ever struggled with those things, but I have personally. I know everybody here has never wanted more, wanted to take the first slice of pizza. Oh man, now we're getting into it. It's the biggest piece, man, I want that. While we're praying, Lord, thank you for this food. And you got one eye looking at it. That's the big piece, most cheese, right? None of you, I know, it's just me. It's just me. None of us have ever been greedy, or none of us have ever thought, I can do it on my own. I don't need any help. I'm fine. I'll push through. I'm determined. You can't get me down. I got the eye of the tiger. You know, all these phrases we like. But the tithing breaks the power of these sinful things. Remember, Jesus said in Matthew 6 in the Sermon on the Mount, verse 19, do not lay up for yourselves treasures on earth where moth and rust destroy and where thieves break in and steal, but lay up for yourselves treasures in heaven where neither moth nor rust destroys and where thieves do not break in and steal. And then the big verse 21, for where your treasure is, there your heart will be also. Where your treasure is, there your heart will be. They go hand in hand. Treasure and heart go hand in hand. Remember the story that we read last week about the widow at the temple in Mark 12. Mark tells us, and he sat down, this is Jesus, he's talking about Jesus, and he sat down opposite the treasury and watched the people putting money into the offering box. Many rich people put in large sums, and a poor widow came and put in 2 small copper coins, which make a penny. And he called his disciples to him and said to them, truly I say to you, this poor widow has put in more than all of those who are contributing to the offering box. For they all contributed out of their abundance, meaning their extra or their leftovers. But she gave out of her poverty, has put in everything she had, all she had to live on. Remember, your treasure and your heart are intertwined. And this lady, this poor widow, her heart was set on God. And so her treasure followed suit, even though it cost her everything that she had. So tithing breaks the power of greed, material things. And Jesus said, don't store up all that stuff. And it breaks the power of self-sufficiency, that if I keep my money, I'll be okay. I can do it. Number 3, tithing is meant to bring freedom, not a burden. It's supposed to be light. It's supposed to be a release. It's supposed to be joyous. Not supposed to be, I got to tithe. Oh, man, I don't know if I can do this. Oh, okay, fine. I'll tithe. You talked me into it. Please, if that's the attitude, please don't. Please don't tithe, because it's just you're wasting your money at that point. because the heart isn't aligned. It's supposed to be freeing. Jesus said in Matthew 23:23, "Woe to you, scribes and Pharisees," those were the religious leaders, "hypocrites, for you tithe mint and dill and cumin," all their spices, "and you have neglected the weightier matters of the law," like the more important things, justice and mercy and faithfulness. These you ought to have done without neglecting the others. You blind guides, straining out a gnat and swallowing a camel. It's like you guys are focusing totally on the wrong thing, and you're so particular and so rigid on the tithe. Man, you're hammering everybody, and you give faithfully of all of your stuff, of your tithe, and you're proud of it. But you're forgetting the huge things, like bringing justice and mercy and faithfulness and requiring that of the people. They got it so backwards. They made tithing all legalistic. See, when it came to tithing, God wanted the tithe to be a source of blessing for his people, for them. It was for the people that were giving the tithe. But the religious manipulators, really we could call them, of Jesus' day, they turned the blessing into a burden. Instead of showing devotion to God, instead of showing a desire to minister to those that were in need and help people, lift them up, the tithe had basically become just a way to fulfill a religious obligation. And when that happens, when it's just an obligation, giving actually goes down. It becomes less because it's my obligation to complete it. And that's all I have to do. So what's the bare minimum that I have to do? And then we do that. And we check the list, check it off the list. And we move on. And that's not what Jesus is about. So it's no wonder that Jesus comes against this legalistic mindset so much and so harshly and strongly. But also notice that Jesus says, "These you ought to have done," like the tithing. What is the these? He's talking about, or these you ought to have done without neglecting the others. That it's about both. He didn't say, forget about the tithe. He says, go ahead and keep tithing, still tithe, but also be passionate about these other things that are important as well. And so I wonder if we don't hear about tithing a whole lot in the New Testament, because by this point it was a given and it was a norm that everybody tithed. They were used to it. And so Jesus says, look, keep doing what you're doing, but you're forgetting about the most important things. So it's meant to bring freedom, not a burden. And then the last one is that tithing is a way that we worship. See, sometimes we forget that. We get lost in all of the money side of it, and we forget that tithing is worship to the Lord. Actually, honestly, the focus of tithing is really more on the condition of my heart than on the percentage of my income. Like I said earlier, if you're giving begrudgingly or out of obligation, just don't do it. I don't care what the percentage is. Don't do it. It's about the overflow of love and worship and thanksgiving in my heart. It's about giving thanks to God. And it prevents guilt or obligation from becoming that motivation for giving. Tithing is an act of worship. And it's our opportunity to just acknowledge that God is God, that we put him on the throne, we put him in the center, that he is the ruler of our lives, that he's the source of every blessing that we enjoy. So if you have issue with the idea of giving 10% as a tithe, let me just ask you this. Is it because you think that the percentage should be higher, or because it should be lower? That you think that we should give less to God? Is that the argument? Is that really the argument? On the other hand, if you do tithe, let me ask you this. Why do you tithe? Why? I hope it's out of the joy of giving and out of a thankful heart, not out of obligation or some kind of legalistic rituals. Because remember, God does not need our money. Psalm 50, verse 9, he says, "But I do not need the bulls from your barns or the goats from your pens, for all the animals of the forest are mine, and I own the cattle on 1,000 hills. I know every bird on the mountains, and all the animals in the field are mine. If I were hungry, I would not tell you." I love that. God's getting kind of sassy with us. Like, even if I were hungry, I wouldn't tell you. For all the world is mine and everything in it. You know what that's speaking to? The value in God's economy? Lordship. Everything is the Lord's. It's really God who even gives me the ability to make any money that I would make. Way back in Deuteronomy 8, verse 17, "You may say to yourself, 'My power and the strength of my hands have produced this wealth for me.'" I've actually heard that from somebody. "But remember the Lord your God, for it is He who gives you the ability to produce wealth." I've heard somebody say, "I'm the one who goes to work. I'm the one who earns a paycheck. I'm the one making this money." And I'm kind of backing away from them. Like, may strike lightning soon. I don't know. Careful. It is God who gives us this ability. And so one of the major misconceptions about tithing is that God is trying to get something from you. He wants your stuff. He wants your money. Remember, I told you before, what I've done is occasionally, back in the day, I used to empty my wallet of cash and leave it at home, not bring any, so that if I got to church and they were trying to get us to give, I'd be like, "Oh, I don't have it, sorry." Because it was on my dresser at home. So I thought I could beat the system there. Because God's just trying to get something from me, but I want to keep my $20. But here, the truth is this: God isn't trying to get something from you. He's trying to get something to you and through you. This is the heart of tithing. It's not from you, it's to you and through you. God knows how we are. He knows how selfish and greedy that our human hearts are. He knows the freedom that we're going to find in so many areas of our lives when we live generously. So remember, it all starts with the idea that everything we have comes from God, that He owns it all, and that giving back to Him is just a natural part of our relationship with Him. It's not supposed to be forced, but our faith and our giving, they can't really be separated. They're intertwined. And so giving is a major way that we put our faith into action. So then when we talk about the tithe, that's just the beginning point of our giving. It's not some budget item that we just check off so we can feel good about being right with God. And honestly, the Lord spoke to me years ago about this. I'll kind of wind down with this. Just share this with you that I've been a tither for a long time. My parents were, and they taught me, so it's always been ingrained in me. And 8 years ago, we were pastoring. We had 3 little kids. We had a single-family income. It was tight. And the Lord told me, we've been given 10%, doing what I need to do, right? I'm clear. I'm in the clear. I got the box checked, 10%. And the Lord said, "Hey, for the next 10 years, I want you to increase your tithe 1% every year." I'm like, what? But don't you understand? You gave me all these kids all at once, and they cost a lot of money. And have you seen the price of diapers? And He's like, "I know. So you decide what you're going to do, but this is what I want you to do." So we started on the journey. And at first, to be honest, it wasn't super joyful, but I was like, "All right, Lord, all right." And then I got into it. So we're in year 8, and I'll just share with you, being honest with you, we're at 18% of our income that we tithe to the church, and that doesn't include some of the other things we support and missionaries and all that. But I want you to know that I'm practicing this. This isn't just, "Hey, you guys, give money." No, I'm giving to the church. I'm tithing here just like you are. Turning that over to the church. When we get paid, right away, comes right out, goes to the church. So I'm kind of wondering, what's God going to do when I get to 20%? In 2 years, I don't know. But He's moving and shaking, and I'm just like waiting around, like, "Okay, Lord, you're going to do something crazy again." But I encourage you to step out in faith. So I'd like to just close by breaking down the good things that come from being generous and giving in the church and outside the church across the board. Here's the benefits of tithing: that others get blessed, you get to grow, the church gets stronger, and God gets the glory. Can we say those four things together? The benefits of tithing are others get blessed, you get to grow, the church gets stronger, and God gets the glory. The reality is that financial resources bless the church so we can do things like spread the gospel message in our community, spread the gospel online like we're doing right now, so that we can create environments to worship God together, so that we can build a healthy, strong community of faith, so that we can make a difference in our local community through other organizations and events and programs and initiatives. Makes a difference because we equip people to teach and to disciple others, to support those that are trying to be free from addiction, to help those around us who are in need or who are facing crisis, to give to world missions all around the world, to equip and to resource families, to raise up leaders of tomorrow, to provide a safe and loving and exciting place for kids to have fun and to experience Jesus. These resources help us to be able to marry people, to bury people, to baptize people, to feed people, and to pray over people. So this is a big deal. So I leave you with the question, will you trust the Lord with your finances? Will you live by the kingdom values of lordship, stewardship, and generosity? Will you give tithing a shot? I think you might be surprised at how much God is interested in your relationship with Him and your relationship with money. So let me challenge you with this. If you're not a tither, if you'll take the next 3 months and you'll become a tither and you give 10% right off the top, before the government gets any, before anybody gets anything, the first and the best, you take 10%. You do that for the next 3 months. If at the end of those 3 months you do not feel like God has spoken to you, that He has moved, that He has acted, that He has blessed, that He has set you free, that you do not see any impact in your life from the Lord, you can have all of that money back. Because I believe in this. That we're not going to shame you, look down on you. You can come and say, it didn't work for me. We will write you a check that day and give it back to you and say, thank you for trying it. Because I believe in it. And I just wonder what God wants to do. Can we stand and pray together? So I'm just going to have a short prayer today because I want you to pray and I want you to ask the Lord what He wants you to do, what He wants you to give, what He wants you to step up with. And maybe you're already there. Maybe there's so many generous people in this church. It blows my mind. We are so fortunate. And as a pastor, I'm so blessed to be your pastor, to be here. I see God's hand on your lives. And those that tithe, it gets hilarious sometimes what God does and how He has blessed. And we could have so many stories, and we keep some of that private because we're not trying to flaunt these things, but let me just tell you, God's faithfulness in this church from the people that are sitting around you right now is amazing. So ask Him what He wants from you. And it may not even be a money thing. It may be tithing, or it may be how you serve and how you give of yourself, of your time and your energy, your involvement. And are you on a team? Are you serving anywhere? Are you pouring into others? Are you equipping the next generation? It may be tithing your time. So Lord, we invite you here to speak to your people and to just stretch us, stretch our faith. May we be hilariously generous to you, to your church, to this community. And I just wonder how hilarious it could get if we would just obey you, if we would trust you and have faith in you. So I pray for an extra dose of courage for all that are here, all that are joining us online. Flood our hearts with courage and the audacity to just go all in with you, realizing that we can never outgive God. Thank you, Lord. Thank you, Lord. Now take this and go and chew on it all week long. And if the Lord speaks to you this week, please let me know. Send me a message about what God is doing in your life. May the Lord bless you and keep you, make his face shine on you and be gracious to you and give you peace. And may you go be a light in the darkness. Amen. Amen.